Hey y'all, and welcome to Bradley the Singing Chef. It is soup day in my kitchen. I'm so excited about this recipe. One of my favorite soups, if I see it on a menu anywhere that I really want, especially in the fall and in the winter, is butternut squash soup. And I'm gonna take us on a little bit of an Asian detour with this butternut squash soup. And so let's get started. All right, first things first, we've gotta take care of the actual squash. Butternut squash in the store looks maybe intimidating. It's a big, scary vegetable for some, but I'm gonna make it super simple as to how to break this down and get it cooked in a way that's super easy to handle for this soup. So both ends of the squash can get chopped off. Make sure you have a really, really sharp knife and that you hold it steady here, pinching with your forefinger and your thumb actually on the bottom of the blade, and curl your fingers around the handle, okay, the other three fingers, right? That gives you a really, really steady blade as you're cutting. That's for any kind of chopping that you do, but especially on a harder vegetable like this. Sharp blade, nice firm grip, okay? I'm going to cut off the tail end of the squash, as well as the stem of the squash. That can go over here. Now I have a flat surface on one end, right? So I should be able to go directly down the center of the squash pretty easily and steadily because I've got that flat surface on one end. Ta-da! Two halves of a squash, right? So at the base end, you're gonna have all these fun seeds. It's just like when you're carving a pumpkin. You're gonna have all these seeds in one end of that. And all you really need to do is just take a spoon of any sort and just scrape out all of the seeds, which can be a messy job. I get in there with the edge of that spoon just to get out all of the seeds, as well as the pieces of squash that attach the seeds that are a little bit on the slimy side, just like your normal pumpkin for your jack-o'-lantern. And that's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. All of that's gonna cook just fine. All right, same process with the other side. I'm gonna take my spoon and dig down in there. Once I've sort of cut them away, God's utensils are sometimes the easiest. So I'm just gonna scrape out all these seeds and extra flesh that I don't need. Perfect. Getting there, getting there, getting there. More seed, come on little guy. All right. One last little scrape, now that I've gotten the majority out. To get all the seeds out. Perfect. All right, scrape off my hands. I had a couple of runaway seeds. It's okay, just pick them up, pop them in that bowl. You can actually dry those seeds if you wanted to in the oven. Salt them, and they're a pretty tasty snack, just like pepitas or pumpkin seeds. So, you know, waste not, want not. If that kind of thing is something you want in your snack bin, that'll work. All right, so here's where people get a little afraid. They're like, okay, how do I get all this off of the peel, but I don't waste the squash and I get enough of it for my soup? Here's where things get easier for you, okay? We are gonna actually bake these squash in the oven, okay, for about half an hour to 40 minutes at 425. All I'm gonna do to them before I put them on my parchment lined baking dish is put some olive oil on them. You can put some salt and pepper if you want, but at this point the seasoning is irrelevant. That's gonna happen once we actually put the soup together, okay? This process in the oven is just to get this skin to come off and leave you with as much of your butternut squash flesh as you possibly can get into this soup. Okay, handy little kitchen hack that I learned. So you know how you want to put parchment paper on some kind of a pan for baking of any sort. what I always find is when you pull it out of that roll, it's always curling up on itself, and you're trying to put it down in your pan flat so that you can get it where you want it so that things don't stick to your pan. The easiest thing to do is that. Take your parchment paper and wad it up into a ball, and that makes the parchment far more pliable when you put it into your pan, and it will lay flat and not curl up on you, and you won't be fighting it forever. That's pretty much in any pan. If it's a cake pan or whatever. That little trick has saved me a lot of angst in baking things. Okay, so all I'm gonna do to these is I'm gonna put a little drizzle of olive oil on that side, and the flesh side is gonna go down onto the parchment. Just a little drizzle, not much. And then we're also gonna drizzle all over the skin side of these squash, and then rub that like you are putting on suntan oil all over your butternut squash, okay? Now that they are wet with all of that good olive oil, we're gonna put them into a 425-degree oven for, like I said, about a half an hour to 40 minutes. And then we're gonna take them out and let them cool completely so that you can touch them, okay? And when we get those out of the oven and get them cooled down, I'm gonna show you how easy it is to peel these squash and get them going in this fantastic soup. Hey y'all, welcome back. So I just got my butternut squash out of the oven. Stayed in there for about 40 minutes or so, and then I let it cool down for probably another 10 to 15. Just so that this pan and the squash is handleable. I don't know if that's a word or not, but anyway. And as you can see here, I'm trying to show you, I can literally just pick up the outer edge of the squash peel, and it just comes right off. I mean, come on, that is kitchen magic right there. So, I'm just gonna peel off all of the exterior peel on these squash. Super, super easy. Get there on the edge. Like I said, you want to make sure you cool these down, that way you can get your hands on them. Throw all the peel away. One squash done. That's one half. And I'm just going to go to the edge of the second one. Grab that peel, peel it back. Just plain roasted butternut squash like this would be an awesome side dish, but we are going to make a soup that is to die for today. I think you're going to love it too. Here in Florida, we pretend that it gets cold outside in the winter and in the fall. So we eat soup to pretend. But you know what? I do love a really good soup anytime. Okay, so I'm just going to take a large spatula and pull each of these squash to my cutting board. That parchment paper is helping me a lot by not sticking. And I'm going to put this tray out of the way. Alrighty. And just like that, I have these two beautiful roasted squash on my board. Now, the reason that I did it this way is because you really want cubes of this broken down, and cutting cubes out of cooked squash is so much easier than trying to do it out of raw. I mean, it is a job. So roasting it first gets the peel out of your way and makes breaking down the squash really easy, because literally the knife just slides through the butternut squash like butter. Cut all the way through one direction and then the other. Simple as that. No rhyme or reason, because we're going to break this down with a blender once we make it into soup. I'm just going to take all of that squash, put it over here. Oh, This orange color is so pretty in this mixing bowl to await the soup pot. Yes. Oh my gosh. That looks amazing. I'm going to quickly go wash my hands and I will be right back. Okay, y'all, I am back. I've washed my hands, took the opportunity to wash my knife and my board so I can get going on the rest of this beautiful butternut squash soup. Got my soup pot over here on about a medium-high heat, starting to heat up for me. First thing I'm going to do is get some aromatics and spices into this bowl. We're going to start with an onion, and I'm actually only going to use a half of an onion. This is about, I'd say, a medium to large size onion. I'm just going to use a half because I really want the squash to be the star, okay? You can save this other half, put it in a Ziploc bag, pop it in your fridge, take it out for your next recipe or your next batch of soup, whatever that soup may be. Peel off this outer layer all the way. Put that in the garbage bowl. Perfect. That onion had lots of roots, so I'm going to scrape those up and get those in the garbage so they don't wind up in the soup. All right, just going to hold my hand flat, cut straight across into the side of the onion, almost all the way down to that other root end that we left. And just going to give a pretty fine dice on this onion, so cut down the length of the onion from the root tip all the way down, and then just run your knife through for a pretty small dice on this onion. Toss the root away, and I'm just gonna, for good measure, run my knife through these onions one more time. I don't want any giant pieces. They're gonna break down once they get in the pot, and then of course our immersion blender is going to do some of the work for us too. Now I know I just said a word that people are like, you want me to use a what? Immersion blender. I'm going to use an immersion blender today, but you could totally do this in a regular blender in batches as well to blend up this soup, but the immersion blender works too, so that's what I'm going to use today. All right, so I've got half an onion diced pretty small. I'm going to put about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil into my pan. And get these onions directly in there. Thunderous round of applause as they hit the oil. Just 1/2 of an onion diced into the pot. All right, next thing I need is some garlic. Imagine that, Bradley putting onion and garlic into a dish. So, smash these cloves, take the peel off. I'm just using 2 pretty large cloves of garlic into the mix. Now I said at the beginning of this, we're going to kind of take a little Asian route to get this soup today. I experimented with this recipe to put this kind of Asian flair to it, and I loved it so much. I mean, this soup did not last in my house very long at all because I could not stop eating it. And I think you're really gonna love it. So thought I'd share it with all of you. It came out of literally an experiment. I was like, I want to make something with butternut squash because it's fall, and this soup is what came out of that experiment. Tossing away the root into those cloves of garlic. Great. Turn that heat down just a skosh. Great. There we go. Onions are starting to get translucent for me. Gonna give them a pinch of salt just to help them along, and a little pinch of black pepper. Great. All right, run my knife through this garlic to get a pretty good fine mince on those 2 garlic cloves. Into the pot. There they go. Beautiful. The garlic a stir into the onions and the oil. They're starting to get translucent, which is where we want them. Got my heat on about medium or so. I don't want it too high because I don't want the onions to completely get brown. All right. Before I move any further, you know I've got to put a little bit of my favorite ingredient. What goes better with butternut squash than just 1/2 of its name, butter? I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of salted butter into the pot to get going. All right, next thing I'm going to add, like I said, I'm going to take us on a little bit of an Asian tour. One of the most wonderful flavors in Asian cuisine is fresh ginger, and so we are going to add a pretty good nub, almost the size of my thumb. I've got my microplane ginger to be able to actually grate the ginger into the pot. The first thing I got to do is take off this skin off of that, and the best tool for that is a plain old kitchen spoon. Over your garbage bowl, you're going to just scrape the edge of the ginger root with your spoon, and it literally comes right off. It is not difficult at all. I scrape back towards myself to get the majority of the skin off of my ginger root. It's a little tricky around all these nooks and crannies of a ginger root, but the spoon is kind of the perfect shape to get in there and take care of all of that skin. Now I'm going to scrape the other direction. So I can go a little bit faster. Go, get this other side. And after you scrape off all that skin, you're left with this beautiful yellow flesh of fresh ginger, and there is so much flavor in fresh ginger. I want a lot of ginger in this, so I'm actually using both the fresh and a little bit of ground ginger spice. You could do all ginger spice too, but I really think the fresh makes a big difference. So I'm left with this, yeah. And I use a microplane to make sure that I don't get any of those fibrous pieces into my pot. And I just go to town on this ginger root. Go down, tap, 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 into the bowl it goes. Oh, it smells so good. I don't think I can fully explain how good this already smells. Ginger's got a little bit of heat to it, which I like against the sweetness of the butternut squash. And it's going to go awesome with the base of this, which we're going to use a little bit of vegetable stock. You could use chicken stock too. Either of those will work. I'm going to make this one a little bit more veggie. So I'm using vegetable stock. Great. It's the majority of that ginger. I'm just going to scrape off the underside of my microplane to make sure I get as much of that ginger as I can into the bowl. All right, let's get that stirred in. You're going to see in the bottom of your pot little brown bits sticking to the pot. That's perfectly okay, because we're going to deglaze that with all those liquids that go into the soup. Perfect. All right, let's talk spices. So I've already added a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper into the mix. The next spice that I'm going to use, like I said, I'm going to add some actual ground ginger in addition to the ginger root, maybe about a teaspoon or so. of ground ginger. And I'm adding this now because I want the heat to help me bloom these spices. Next spice I'm gonna use is curry powder. Again, going a little bit Asian, Indian on this. For that, I'm gonna use maybe a tablespoon or so of curry powder. Then I'm going to take ground cinnamon. Only about, I'd say, a teaspoon. Cinnamon's pretty strong. So maybe about a teaspoon of cinnamon into the pot. Great. Now, the last spice I'm going to add is cayenne. Cayenne is super powerful and spicy, so I'm going to go easy on this to start. I might build it later. But I'm literally going to do 1, 2, 3 dashes of cayenne, not even close to a measurement, yeah? And then I'm just going to stir around all those spices into the onions and the garlic and the ginger. Crank up my heat a little bit and you will immediately smell those spices as they bloom in the heat of your pot. Perfect. All right. I promised you we were going to deglaze all those brown bits there in the bottom of your pot. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take about 2 cups of vegetable stock, put that into my pot. It's about a half a box of stock just to get going. Perfect. And that, as you rub the bottom of the pot, is just going to take up all of that color off the bottom of the pot. But that color is flavor, and you do not want to leave it behind. So that's my first step. I have my roasted squash here on the side that we took out of the oven and peeled and made sure that it was nice and cubed up. That is going to all go directly into the pot with all those aromatics, spices, and the vegetable stuff. All right? Now, last 2 things that need to go into this pot. I'm going to let this cook for a little while to warm that squash through, but we are so close to soup, guys. All right, next I have about, I'd say, 1/3 of a cup of dark brown sugar. That is also going to go in. I want another hit of black pepper into the mix. And another pinch of salt. Because the squash doesn't have any seasoning on it yet. So that's why I'm adding a little bit more salt and pepper into the mix. And then, the last glorious step is a can of beautiful coconut milk. Oh, this is the game changer, guys. Butternut squash, that cinnamon and sugar, coconut milk, and that little warmth of the cayenne is perfect. All right, in goes a can of coconut milk. Garbage, garbage. And I'm just gonna use this spatula to kind of break down the squash a little bit. Not even a necessary step. I'm just doing it so that I can witness the glory that is in this pot. Perfect. All right. So it's time to break out the fun little toy called an immersion blender. All right. I'm going to take this off the heat to do this for now. Turn down my eye. This is an immersion blender, or a stick blender, okay? And the reason it's an immersion blender is you need to actually immerse the entire bulb metal end of the blender into the liquid that you are blending, and it helps with this vacuum motion, and it blends all of this beautifully together into our soup. So I'm gonna work at this for a bit and I'll be right back in a few. Guys, I wish you were in here to smell this kitchen. Let's do it. Last minute, my immersion blender. If you use this immersion blender, I'm going to warn you, keep it immersed. If you take it out and it is still spinning, you will be wearing soup, okay? So just be careful. Keep it in that liquid mix. I'm going to turn off my heat because honestly, this is good to go. Take out my immersion blender, set it to the side here, get her unplugged, and I am ready to dish up some soup. I'll be right back. All right, y'all, it is butternut squash soup time. I'm so excited to taste this. I cannot wait. So I'm going to ladle out a good bowl. This beautiful orange fall colored soup. Just for a little garnish, I've got some fresh cilantro over here. To continue our Asian theme, just gonna break those down, sprinkle that into the bowl. I mean, come on, y'all. That is what I'm talking about. Oh my gosh. Gotta taste this. It is smooth as silk and so buttery with a little hint of warmth from that cayenne. Those few dashes were plenty. Just on the back side, you get a little bit of heat with that curry and the coconut milk for sweetness. Oh my gosh. This is one of my new favorite soups, and I hope you will try this recipe. If you don't have the immersion blender or the stick blender, this is still doable. If you've got any kind of a blender in your house, you can put the soup in batches into the blender and then pour it out ready to serve, and you are good to go. Thank you so much for joining me today on Bradley the Singing Chef. I really do hope you'll try this recipe. It's delicious. I wish you all had a bowl with me right now. Eat well, love always. Bon appetit, y'all.